Now, after learning the concept of arrays and matrix, now it is the time to do some hands-on experience and we will see how to take input for an array in a C++ program. Well, there are several ways for array input. The first option is initialize the array during the declaration itself. This is just same as initializing a variable with an optional initial value. Just like the variable declaration, array declaration also starts with the data type. Data type specifies the type of the element that this array will hold. This data type is followed by the name of the array, which is again followed by the size of the array inside a box bracket. This is the extra part which was not there in a non-primitive variable, in a primitive variable declaration. This index, this size part. Now, if you want to initialize all the elements, of an array during the declaration, you have to initialize, you have to write down all the values inside a set of opening and closing curly brace separated by comma. So here the array is of type string and the initial values inside, the size of the array is 3 and the initial values are Alice, Bob and Cynthia. And since all the elements are string, I have utilized a double quote for each of these values. However, the array can be of type integer, type floating point number or whatever it is. In those cases, you really do not need to use this double quote. And if the array is of character type, of course, you have to use a single quote to point out that these are all characters. And always remember to separate each data element with a comma. So that's the first way. The second way to initialize the array or get the values inside an array is this. So first we have declared the array, that is the type of the array followed by the array name followed by its size inside a opening and closing box bracket. And then we have accessed each element of the array one after another and put the desired value inside it. So here this is the syntax how you can access each element or elements at each index of the array. So students followed by 0 inside a box bracket means the 0th element of the students array. I have initialized it with Alice. Similarly, students followed by 1 inside the box bracket means it is the 1th element of the students array which I have initialized with Bob. And in the same way, I have initialized the 2th element of students with Cynthia. The third way is utilizing a loop. And this type of initialization is very much useful when you want your array to be populated by user input instead of any input inside the program itself. So here what I have done is first I have declared the array, that is data type, array name followed by the size of the array inside box bracket. Then I have used a for loop. Since the array starts from index 0, I have designed my loop variable to start from 0. So that is int I equals 0. And now since the size of the array is 3, I have prepared the condition so that the loop variable will iterate until it is less than 3. So I less than 3. And finally, I have just incremented the loop variable. So what will happen in this loop is, first, the value of I is 0. So it will ask the user to input the element for the 0th element of the students. In the next iteration, it will again ask the user to input the 1th element for the student because I is already incremented to 1. And in the final iteration, it will ask the user to input the 2th element of the array because I already incremented from 1 to 2. And this way you can take the input from the user. Now let's see the scenario in a matrix. As I have told earlier, matrix is just an extension of array. Basically, it is a two-dimensional array. So instead of only one size, in matrix you have to specify two different sizes. The first one is the number of rows and the second one is number of columns. So the matrix students and measures have 3 different rows and each row has 2 different columns. Now look at this initialization very carefully. In this initialization, there are 2 sets of opening and closing curly brace. The outer set of opening curly brace and closing curly brace stands for the rows. And inside this, all the other couple of opening and closing curly brace are the columns pointing towards the columns inside that rows. So this Alice CS is the 2 columns of the 0th row. Bob and Bio are the 2 columns in the 1th row. Cynthia History is the 3rd row, 2 columns of the 2th row. Something like this. In this way, you can take the input. The other way is just access each element of the matrix directly and put the value there. So this is a very direct way. So here, as you can see, this 0, 0 means 0th row and 0th column. There I have put the value called Alice, the name of the students. And then 0th row, 1th column, I have put the value CS, which is Alice's measure. The same way I have initialized 1th row and 0th column with the name Bob and 1th row and 1th column with his measure Bio. And the same way I have initialized the 2th row and 0th column with the name Cynthia, and finally the 2th row and 1th column with Cynthia's measure, which is history. So this way you can populate a matrix. Now it is also possible to take the input from the user utilizing a for loop. That I have left for your hands-on experience. The hint that I can give you that you have to use a nested for loop to take the input. The first outer for loop will correspond to all the rows and the inner for loop will correspond to the columns in each row.